There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I can see a little record symbol now. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. So that actually brings up a point that I wanted to touch on. When people hear about the variety of whiskey, still a lot of them are going to be focusing on, well, the variety of single malt whiskies. That seems to be where the buck stops with a lot of whiskey drinkers, just single malts. But the Murray McDavid range shines a light on everything. The malts, the grain whiskies, blended malts, and the blends themselves. In fact, that spectrum behind you beautifully highlights it. Do you think, though, that we're heading for a future where whiskey in all its forms gets proper appreciation?
Yeah, I really hope so. And, you know, what a lot of people need to remember is the importance of blended whiskies in the landscape of Scotch whiskey. I mean, it would be lovely if we could be celebrating all day, every day, these 30, 40, 50-year-old single malt whiskies. But, you know, there's not much of it around in comparison. And also, you might have to sell your house or a child, you know, to get some of these things. But there's certainly quality to be had with blends, and there's so much excitement. Certainly, that's why we introduced the blended categories and the grain, of course, into the Murray McDavid series as of 2015. Because we firmly believe that there's so much magic to be explored within those categories. I mean, with your single malts, of course, you know, you have your original style of distillate that gets put into a cask for further maturation, and you can gauge that evolution of flavor and style, and if you're familiar with, you know, Malt from the official distillery, then you kind of know what you're in for. And they have their characteristics, their house styles that you know have been so adored, you know, for years.
It's famous for being sort of big, meaty, heavy kind of stuff.
Well, this is it. And I mean, what I love about working with an independent bottler is, you know, that's just one distillery that we've mentioned there. Currently have distillates from around 95 different distilleries, some of which are at our Colburn warehouses up in Speyside. We also have the Brackler warehouses, and of course we do have some of our younger stocks in third-party warehousing. So there's, you know, around 25,000 casks that not Murray McDavid hold, but our parent company ACO Limited, who have been brokering whiskey for the past 20 odd years. So there's so much variety there, not just in terms of different styles of distillates, but age as well. And the rebrand in 2015, me and managing director Edward Odin, we looked at the range. Historically, Murray McDavid was solely focusing on single malt whiskies, looking to really push the boundaries of maturations. You might remember a lot of different wine cask influences there. That's from the original team, Mark Rainier, Gordon Wright, and Simon Coughlin. You know, they had their historic roots in the wine industry, and with Gordon Wright marrying together the knowledge of the Scotch whisky industry, destined to be something very different, very unusual in quite a traditional landscape of Scotch whisky at the time, which mostly bourbon sherry maturation. And we still adopt that ethos within our grain categories and our blends. So when we have all of these, the access to the different distillates, the access to the different styles of casks, the blended categories allow us to really get creative about our ideas of how we want a dram to be, how we want a dram to really sing and resonate with the different styles of distillates coming together, married into let's say a Sauternes cask or something. So just offering something a little bit different, a little bit unusual, while celebrating the traditions of the industry.
Is there anything that you personally look for when you're getting involved with the blend or even the single? That's something that you always want to see going into a bottle.
Yeah, well, I'm in a very fortunate position where I'm actually the leader of the whiskey creations team for Murray McDavid. So all of our bottlings, I'll select an initial parcel that I'll want to inspect, and we'll share those. Well, I'll host a tasting with our tasting panel. It'll always be a blind tasting. So whether it's, one of our Mission Gold whiskies, typically 20, 30, 40 years of age, single cask whiskies, these will be side by side tasted with some of our younger single malts, grains and blends. The main things that we always look for, we have to have some kind of there always has to be integration of spirit and wood. And of course, being an independent bottler, the maturation side is of key importance to us. We do, of course, need to assess, understand, and appreciate the style of distillate. That will always be on our minds when, and again, it's my part of the process that comes in of selecting those spirits to be re-racked if they need it. They don't always need re-racking, but I can tell you, if we're looking for, what's in my glass at the moment is it's one of my favorite drams from the current series. It's 7 years old. It's the peat side in our blended malt series. Now, for me, this is a shining example of what we try to achieve with every bottling that we put out. Each year, we tend to put out maybe 18 to 25 different expressions, and they all need to carry some kind of Murray McDavid influence, and that will typically be through the cask selection, the wood that we're using. Now, the peat side here, just 7 years of age. Now, 7 years of age, some people will see on a bottle and immediately, they'll turn their nose up. Even worse,
they're looking for double digits or nothing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And even worse, it's got the word blended on. So a lot of people, forget it. But this is why I love hosting tastings and doing these events, is actually, putting whiskey into people's glasses, and forget about any of the the big marketing stories that you hear, or forget the age. We're solely assessing the spirit here, and it's a credit to the bottlers who are producing these younger styles with integration, with character of the original distillate, but with the extra bit of magic in there. The peat side here, 3.5 years in bourbon. Most of the spirits that we purchase from distilleries come in these refill bourbon casks, which wonderful if you're looking to mature the whiskey for 15, 20, 30 years, because the spirit will slowly, gently mature, soften. I always coin it as aging. When we're using malts or grains in these refill casks for an extended period of time, we're allowing the delicacies to really shine through that soft maturation process. I always tend to coin that as aging, whereas something a little bit more forceful, a little bit more hands-on with the maturation, using these first fill casks like the peat side here. The last 3.5 years has been in first fill port casks. We're really getting the depth of color, the flavor in there, and with the youth of the peated malt, we're still allowing the spirit style to shine through. So that's for me, that's a real all-rounder, and that's what we look for when we're selecting to bottle, is that all-round integration. I always like to put something in the release that kind of raises a few eyebrows as well. The little unexpected twist on. I mean, for instance, here with our grain, and I think grain is such an untapped market. I mean, there's a lot of grain out there, but there isn't a huge amount of grain that is really being pushed and developed and understood in what actually you can do in terms of maturation with the different styles of grain. One of the triumphs for this year is our Loch Lomond. We've got a lot of this 96 stock, and we've bottled some previous. Back in 2015, we had the 18-year just refill bourbon all the way through. The following year, 19 years of age, refill for 18, an additional year in Koval bourbon barrel, very simple casks. We actually have the sole import rights to the Koval casks from Chicago. They produce a variety of different distillates, but what's really quite unique about their casks is the capacity, just 110 litres in size. So we get a much more intense maturation there, a lot quicker flavour pickup, which for a creamy, sweet Loch Lomond grain, that really just elevated it. Wonderful. This particular Loch Lomond example, 22 years. It's spent just under 20 years in refill bourbon, just over 2 years in an ex-Armagnac cask.
All right, that is a new one for me.
Yeah, well, exactly, and it really works. I mean, the past two expressions have been really playing on the sweeter side of the profiles of the Loch Lomond grain. But this, the Armagnac, really richens it up. We're getting more spice in there, and bottled at a slightly higher percentage as well, 50%. With our selection process, every expression that we look to bottle gets analysed at cask strength 50% and at 46%. And within our creations team, within the tasting panel, that's where we decide, what should be bottled as what, and is it actually ready for bottling? Does it need to go back into the program? There's been many can I call them arguments?
Discussions, heated and passionate discussions.
Passionate discussions, yeah, thank you very much. And we have these passionate discussions at our Parkmore Distillery manager's house, just in Dufftown. And we do that every 6 months or so. We were due to have one during the Spirit of Speyside Festival this year, which would have been taking place in the next week or two, but unfortunately we are where we are.
Hopefully we'll be able to play catch up, but yeah.
Well, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. We might have to utilize this wonderful technology to have heated debates from far and beyond.
That might be a TV pitch in its own right.
Yeah. Oh, dearie me. No, that is certainly not safe for TV.
When it comes though to, and I liked how you sort of have a delineation between aging and maturation as different concepts, which actually does make a lot of sense. A kind of refill cask will do its work differently and slower. But what I wanted to ask is if there's a kind of predictability to maturation, like if you've been in the business long enough, do you know what each cask will do for each whiskey, or is it a surprise every time?
I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, it's not as if we're walking around Colburn and dipping. That's unusual. That's unusual. That's unusual. No, I mean as I say, we have a lot of casks at different ages and lots of different whiskies in different stages of their development. as I say, we have so many different styles of distillate. There's never going to be one set rule that governs or determines the outcome of everything. As I say, working with the Koval casks, just 110 litres, will mature something completely different to a sherry butt. The style of distillate will also be very important in determining how long it needs to be in that cask. The Koval cask, there are some distillates that 2 months, you need to be really on top of that spirit. Whereas, I do have a soft spot for Isla malts, and we do have access to a lot of Candidly. And for me, Candidly is just so wonderful, because you can pretty much do anything with it in terms of maturation styles. I mean, we've had some again, a soft spot for me is young peat and wine casks. I mean, for me that is possibly my desert island combination. But peated malts, again, just that example alone, you can bottle something as young as, if in the right wood, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of age. But then again, we have examples of maturing Isla malts 10, 20 years, and it just transforms. So to answer your question, there isn't certainly one set rule. For Murray McDavid, we have an art of maturation program, which I have lined up into the next 5 years of production. And as you say, every 6 months or so, we'll get the team together, and we'll go through this year's releases. I mean, in the office as well, I've always got samples coming down for closer inspection. I've just finished a big parcel of grain whiskies, which has been it's been an eye opener, let's say. As they say, we have been really trying to push the grain category as hard as we can in different styles of maturation. And I mean, there are some outstanding examples in there, but there are some which still need a little bit of work. It would certainly make my life a lot easier if you could just put the spirit into a cask and then go and check it a year later. But that's not the way the spirits and wood behave.
That's something I think that probably a lot of people do have the idea that whiskey is kind of a fire and forget. You put it in the cask and then just leave it and it will do everything by itself. But it does need a little bit more stewardship than that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we have our team who, they walk the warehouses on a daily basis, whether it is checking up on our older casks, or whether we have a new batch of wood coming in that will need filling. Of course, new casks coming in, those casks need to be inspected for quality. Sometimes we do see some damaged casks in transit. What we are always so conscious of, because of our history in using wine casks are very temperamental in terms of you need to have an immediate plan. The logistics of getting those wine casks, let's say from Bordeaux up to the warehouses up in Speyside, those things need to be moved as quickly as possible and filled as quickly as possible, because those things drying out, you're going to lose a lot of casks, because a lot of those casks are going to need to be sent for repair, which is all money. Wine casks are not cheap, especially if you're talking about some Premier Cru chateaus, which so it's a tight operation that we that we do have in place. And sorry, I lost my trail there.
I can round it off by saying, because all that effort clearly pays off, because there is some astounding liquid in your bottles, but the bottles themselves are actually quite outstanding to look at. Like, they really do grab your attention. Did you have a part to play in the designs?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined the company, it was very late 2014, early 2015, and Murray McDavid was in a real transition at that point, because historically Murray McDavid was based on Bruichladdich, founded, as I say, by Mark Gordon and Simon. And historically it was the two single malt categories of the Mission Gold and what was known as the core at the time. We thought the core was a bit of a, not a negative word, but it wasn't a nice enough word. So we've actually changed that to the benchmark, because the benchmark series, this is where, you know, we see our single malts really shining, and it's a wonderful example of our efforts to mature whiskies in a slightly unexpected way, but doing it, you know, to a very good standard. So that is our benchmark. Then we have the mystery malt, we have the select grain. The mystery malt is always single malt whiskies, but typically from distilleries that we can't use the name of.
I see. Yes, there's sometimes a bit of touchiness about that when it comes to independent bottling.
Yeah, even more so. I've noticed over the past 5 years with, I think a lot of it boils down to kind of intellectual property and brands wanting to preserve, and quite rightfully so. You know, they want to reserve their name for their produce. Because I guess historically there have been single malts that have just flooded the market, and I can definitely understand if the spirit that you have lovingly created, or your family have lovingly created for hundreds of years, isn't being treated in a way that you would want it to be treated. Why would you want to risk it? So I definitely understand that. But what we've done to kind of counter that is the mystery malt. And with all of our bottlings, whether it's a blend, whether it is the single malt or the grain, you know, we are really quite transparent. It might sound contradictory, being a mystery malt, but also being transparent. But what we do with our mystery malt is we like to give little indicators. Certainly on the back label, we spend so much time and efforts into writing these sometimes quite poetic back labels, which, you know, we'll have a little bit of fun with the whiskey buff. I mean, the main objective is, of course, to be able to identify this single malt from just by using the aroma or the taste. We will give some geographical reference within our point of sales materials as well. We do get a bit sneaky with the what do you call them, the kind of points of destination,
basically anyone who knows well enough will be able to probably work out the origins, but that kind of puzzle is fun in itself.
Well, this is it. Yeah. And, you know, we even went as far as doing a little hangman in our little brochure. And, you know, it's a little bit of fun to puzzle and entertain. That's the mystery malt. We only bottle a small amount of that a year, but it's good fun. And that's what whiskey should be, is, you know, something that engages a group of friends. What is this? creating more of those debates that we have within our whiskey creations team. Everyone's got opinions, and it's always entertaining to throw those around. As I say, the grain for me is a passion project at the moment, because of the diversity that we have. Is not just now. We've been maturing some of these grains for the last 2 or 3 years in this kind of updated maturation program, which the Loch-Lomond itself and the Armagnac, stunning. The younger grain option that we have this year is 12-year-old Girvan.
Lovely.
That had been 10 years in, again, refill bourbon, 2 years in first fill Madeira. Again, just building these really unexpected or kind of jumping out of the general output of grain whiskey, and actually introducing new flavors into the categories. And the blended malt is always a really interesting one, because it has the B word, as they say, the B word, the blend. And I mean, over the years, I've done so many tastings, been to so many shows. It's been wonderful, and I look forward to seeing you all again when this all blows over. But people see the B word, and like the peat side here, you can always trick them with one of these teaspoon blended malts.
All right.
We do have quite a lot of teaspoon malts, not just at this age, but oh my gosh, some of Dufftown's outputs of 25, 30 years of age, which stunning liquids. And you think to those people that come up to your stand and dismiss it because it's a blend. You do just want to kind of shake them, and then you say, look, hold on. I'll often have something in my glass, to even just to get somebody to nose, just to get their senses like, oh, well, hang on, okay, you've got me. I mean, the proof is always in the pudding, and sometimes you do just want to hide away the bottlings before somebody has those preconceived ideas that they're forcing upon you.
That's why so many tastings are done blind in the first place. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's the same with the crafted blends. I mean, we apply the same ethos to the crafted blend. I mean, look here, I'm not sure if you can see, this is a blend that I put together 2 years ago now, 2 years ago now. This is the Colts of Islay, 30 years of age, blended Scotch whiskey, 2 single malts and a grain in there, 50% malt, 50% grain, all of 30 years of age.
Wow.
We have Bowmore, Lefroy, and North British in there. Bottled at natural cask strength at 44.1. Now, if you're going to ignore that because it's got the B word on it, then get rid of it.
You don't deserve it, and it's not for you.
Yeah, well, that's it. There's so much to be enjoyed, and we do, as I say, we do put a lot of work into the points of sales materials, and even on the back label to explain those details on the products themselves, because they really are special. We put as much effort into the blends as we do the Mission Golds. So nothing really should be ignored. I mean, the packaging itself, that was something that we, myself and Edward, managing director, developed back in 2015. Because we wanted to keep that energy of the original Murray McDavid team in producing Scotch whiskey that was pushing boundaries, not just keeping safe into the traditions. Of course, we have to respect the traditions, but also innovate at the same time. So representing these different categories in these really quite striking, bold colours. Over the past 5 years, it's really become a thing that people do notice, do understand. Oh, it's in a blue tin. I'm solely honing in on Murray McDavid's grain whiskies and what that chapter has to offer. I'm not going to lie. At first, it did meet with some raised eyebrows. Certainly within the more traditional side of the Scotch whisky community, but we do notice other producers and other bottlers starting to be a bit bolder in their packaging and starting to maybe aim to a slightly different demographic. I mean, where it really boils down for me is certainly with independent bottlers as a whole. Really, what we're doing is we're trying to communicate with the curious whiskey drinker, because these smaller batches, our single malts are often single casks. And certainly with some of our blends as well, these are small batch things. We might do batches every year, every other year, but they will typically be matured in a slightly different style. So batch 2 of the Colts of Islay here is going to be slightly different for next year. So tuning in to the curious whiskey connoisseurs, that is what we're all about. People that want to follow our journey of, let's say, the Loch Lomond 96 we've been producing for the past 5 years. Where's it going to go? What's it gonna be like? What can you do with this spirit? That's where I really get a kick and a buzz out of working with an independent bottler.
Yeah, deeply exciting, and I've got a proper thirst on now.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I'm good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I should have been better prepared. I'll have to say that, Dean Jode, thank you so much. That was absolutely enlightening, and maybe also one in the eye for the folks who met you a few years back when you were still, in your first couple of weeks at the bar and not quite adept at navigating those 250 whiskies. Well, let them take a look at you now.
Yeah, well, it's there's what's wonderful is working with around 600 of those 25,000 casks at the moment, and I can tell you there's a lot more fun and enjoyment to be had in the years to come. And you'll have to, when this all blows over, when you're next up in Speyside, please do come over to Colburn. We can show you some of our maturation processes, our latest projects. Of course, we if you're not going that far north, you can always come and stop over on the Murray McDavid boat down in Glasgow.
Oh yeah, that's a unique asset for independent bottlers to have.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit more central based. So when we do have customers, our distributors flying in, it's such a lovely and unique space to host them for tastings or a bit of lunch. We also take the boat down the water as well, and every month we host tastings on the boat as well. So yeah, more the merrier. Come along.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to. Cool. I'll